All right. Welcome, everyone, to the Serious Angler podcast, where, as always, our main course for you will be talking and hopefully teaching you more about bass fishing, but of course, not without a distraction or 10 here and there. Whether you're here to learn or just hear some bass and banter, you're in the right spot. As always, I'm your host, Bailey Egbrett, and here with me is the Bassin captain, Mr. Andy Fullen, Idaho's finest and biggest potato lover, as he claimed to be on last show, Mr. Adam Deacon. Fellas, how are we doing today?
Uh, Warming up, got the itch to go bass fishing, so now I'm starting to transition back over to that way, even though it's probably gonna be like 2 more months. So that's about it here.
Hurry up and wait.
Yeah, hurry up and wait, get organized. So what's going on with you, Deacon?
Man, out here in potato land, it has been honestly beautiful, cold but sunny. So it is like 40 and sunny today. I wish I had my boat. I would love to get out and go do some crappie fishing and go mess around and forward face some fish. But boat's getting everything upgraded on it, electronics wise, and those types of things. Super cool stuff to come there. And so I've been pulling kind of exactly what Mr. Shane talked about. I've been digging through tackle and organizing and feel like just trying to get ahead on all of that so we can be efficient when our season rolls out, ordering stuff I need. So I enjoy this time of year. It's a little daunting of a task, I feel like, but it's also one of those. It's like crank out a couple hours a day while you're doing something, on the weekends or whatever else, and you get stuff done.
Make a drink, crack a cold one, put on some Creed, blast some Creed, and just get organized in some tackle.
His arms are wide open, all right? Like
his arms are wide open. That's right.
Unbelievable.
And he's 6 feet from the edge, all right? Like
You nailed it.
I liked how you say I want to go forward face some fish. I feel like we should just make a new term for it every time where I'm gonna go glance forward at some fish on the water tomorrow. We just make a different term for it. I'm gonna face forward on some fish this weekend. Just make some fun coin terminology from it.
I mean,
like with cricket tickling, that's a great one.
Right. Well, I didn't want to say scoping because I don't think that's a bad term, but it is live.
It's derogatory these days.
It's derogatory. The other brands. So I'm just trying to be all inclusive. That's all. It's 2025. Give it the program.
Yeah. Well, we're sitting here. It is this show's airing on a January 29th. And like I say, when Andy, you talk about the itch is real. I think there's only so many times you can reorganize a jig tackle box before you kind of lose your mind. And I say that even though I'm only a couple weeks away or a couple weeks removed from fishing. But I got 1 month left, and then we're basically spending all March in Texas, which I'm beyond excited about, especially because us three are going to be in Texas for a little bit of it as well at the Classic. So for folks that are going to be down at the Classic at the Expo, give us a shout at the Serious Angler page. Let us know if you're going to be there because we'll see our three bright and shining faces wandering around the Expo. But looking forward to that, and we'll talk more about that in shows coming throughout the month. But today we got a new show for you guys. So Andy, kick things off for us. Tell a little bit about give the folks a preview of what they're going to hear in today's episode.
What is a ditch, right? So
yes,
yeah. We're joined by Bassmaster Elite Series Pro and Century Belt winner Shane Lehew, right? And we're talking about late winter, springtime ditch fishing, and I think we've all come to agreement that there's just a general term of what a ditch is. So Shane dives in and breaks down all that ditch talking terminology for us, and it's a good one, and how to catch some spots doing it in not only just in the Carolinas, but kind of all over the country. So it's a really good one coming for you guys that are tuned in.
Yeah, big ditch guy. Huge ditch guy.
Huge ditches. Yeah. You got huge ditches and little ditches.
All the ditches love me. Yep. So it's going to be what we'll do throughout the show too for you guys, especially if you're listening. We'll make sure you guys are follow us on social media because we'll make a post about this because like we mentioned here with Shane is ditches is a vague term. It's one of those things I make the analogy that it's like the Southern folk and how they refer to perch is it means many things, but you know it when you see it. And so what we'll do is we'll overlay some images of mapping throughout the show too, to kind of like give you guys a clue into what we're talking about, because it can be, especially like we talked about from the north, like a lot of our lakes are either like little fingers or bowls of grass where there is no such thing as a ditch in those fisheries. So you kind of be like, what the hell is even that? So we'll overlay some images of mapping to kind of give you guys an idea of that. But before we get into things here with Shane, Deacon, what's been the buzz around the industry, man?
Yeah. So, folks, the Business from the Bass Boat segment is brought to you by our friends over at Rec Lending. Good time to buy a boat. We're talking early time in the year. We haven't seen new released models yet that we'll kind of see, the Classic and as we get into spring. So, still some inventory out there. And if you are looking to finance that purchase, give our friends over at Rec Lending a call. But rumors in the industry, this is one that was kind of brought to my attention, both by you, Bailey, and just on different things that the, Hobie, we're talking the kayaks, the well-known kayaks in the fishing industry. There's some rumors, some grumblings that they have been purchased at this point. And so we don't have all the details there. I'm not going to spread a bunch of rumor drama about things, but curious to see where that ends up, number one. And then, man, derbies are rolling. But I guess first, what's your guys' take on the Hobie deal? Any thoughts?
Yeah, I've been kind of hearing rumblings of that for honestly over a year now because Hobie's been in an interesting spot, and me being on their team, for 2024, and it's obviously a great kayak, but it's a brand that I think has been needing a new direction, and I think that's what they've been trying to do over there. And I don't know if that means internally or new ownership. And obviously, hopefully, when this actually comes out to light, there will be some of that to kind of clear of what's the next step for Hobie, because to put it bluntly, there's been a lot of folks that have been kind of disgruntled because it is, the Cadillac of kayaks, if you will, but also the Cadillac that seems to kind of break a little bit too often for the price that they're paying. So it's, but I know like the 2025 model, they did a lot of focus on fixing those pain points. And so I'm excited. I'm getting my hands on the 2025 model here in the next couple weeks, but it's a brand that I think has a lot of work to do. So I'll be curious to see if it is being bought it's a lot of, from credible sources that's we're being told from that it is being bought. And I'll be interested to see what new ownership plans to do with it. So who knows? It'll be obviously if that comes to 100% light, we'll share that with you as we get those news too. But it's interesting. But in other words, the Derbs, man, it's peak season. Toyotas opens, everything's heating up out in the west.
Minners are getting tossed.
Derbs and Minners, baby.
and before people start getting on the bandwagon of like, oh, another year of the Minners, it's like, man, it's the time of year for it, right? This time of year really makes sense. And so we had both, your lower tier pro levels, what I'll call them, or semi-pro and to some aspects. Your Bassmaster Open kicked off on Clarks Hill, a really cold Clarks Hill. I watched a little bit of live on this. I don't know if you guys did over the weekend. But saw Jighead Minnow, obviously that was the winner of the event, and some giant fish on the Jighead Minnow, some really cool big fish catches, if I recall correctly there. But second place, man, don't forget about that dang rock crawler throwing a crankbait on the bank.
Young guy
that was
too.
cool to see. What?
Real young guy too. I think he was.
Yeah, young guy cranking. 19, I think. Yeah. So really, really cool to see that. And then, of course, Rayburn, you would expect this for Rayburn anymore now. It's going to be a scoping deal in the beginning, and that's certainly what it was. Mr. Brody Campbell, who I believe his dad fished with me as a co-angler in the Toyota Series Championship in 2023. And he was telling me about how his son was jumping in, to the tour, the next level, and cranking up. And like, look at the dude's stats, man. He's got $335,000 in earnings with Major League Fishing. Kid's a hammer and won by 6 pounds plus on Rayburn. And just someone to watch out for. So anyways, Brody Campbell, congrats there. And with that too, the Dakota eBear video, man. Curious to see the reactions online with all of this, but pretty neat situation. Bailey, go ahead and walk us through what happened there.
Yeah. Yeah, if people haven't tuned into this yet or have seen it on social, go to Dakota eBear's social media page, and you can't miss it because it's blown up from a viewership standpoint. But essentially, what happened was it looked like he was cranking what I'm assuming was he was targeting brush piles or on a flat. I don't know how it all worked out that like, what he was fishing, but hooked into a giant. I said it in his caption that it was an 8-pounder and got hung up in a brush pile. Something happened with his trolling motor because he's out there fishing in 3-4 footers. She was rolling. You can see it in the video. His trolling motor wouldn't work for whatever reason. Couldn't get over to her. So he had his co-angler and himself put PFDs on, plop in the seats, fire up the big motor, and he's idling back to that fish while cranking and reeling that thing in. It was quite a process, and it was honestly pretty impressive to watch. But it was
a lot of
whole
work.
debacle, and with treble hooks, and you still get an 8-pounder in with all that. You are thanking the fish gods for everything you got because it was a pretty impressive catch. So I think what we'll do, we'll link it down below too in the show notes too, make it easy on you guys if you want to go and peep that video. But it was impressive. It was impressive. But it's old Sam Rayburn just showing out per usual this time of year, and big weights. We lost you, Deacon.
Thank you. We're here, right? Like, to me, this is finally where we're just absolutely cranking tournament season, everything else with that. And with that, fan question here. Way too early of predictions on Opens qualifiers. I feel like this is tough because we've only had one division start. Next division is about to kick off. But any names come to mind for you two?
Here's what I'll do. I'll pull these up for us here. But
one
I gotta say, it is cool.
I have one.
Okay, let her rip.
Ryan Lockmeat. I think he took 8th. He was in the top 10, I think.
Yeah, he's at 9th.
We did an awesome lure lab with him about a year ago with the Chick-fil-A Cup on a jerkbait, Vision 110 Junior. Yeah. So
that was one of the cooler modifications.
He's got some tricks up his sleeve. He'll catch him.
I do love the fact that Chase Clark wins on Clark's Hill. I feel like that is just fitting. And I think anybody that is in the PR or media realm was like, wow, that kid, thank you, because you just made my title for whatever piece I'm putting together extremely easy.
Clark dominates Clark's Hill.
Exactly. Like it's the easiest thing to put together. Dude in second place, Blaine Bunny, kind of a cool name. But no, I think when you look at it, I don't think, did we ever look at schedules for Opens versus BPT? Like, can you fish a full schedule this year, or was there a conflict?
And great question. I don't know that.
I feel like we usually do that with the first fantasy fishing show.
Well, the major benefit to a lot of guys this year is the Opens being 2 divisions, right? You have so many guys just fishing one of the 2 divisions and doing whatever tournaments they want. Yeah. So I anticipate a lot of that, right? It's giving way to a lot of guys who maybe were thinking about it. They can dip their toe in.
If that is the case, my first and the one that jumps out at me, Michael Neal. I mean, that is one to me that is, if he can fish a full schedule, I'm betting all of my bank account that Michael Neal will qualify for the Elite Series. That dude is way too good. The other ones that jump out, I think ones that one I think they'll have a great shot, but ones I think I would love to see make it. Laker Howell sitting in 5th right now after one event, obviously having some history with the family there.
And his dad's back on the Elites too this year.
Dad's back on the Elites, yeah. And then I guess the last one I would have that I'd put some money on, more so out of, I would love to just see it happen because he's a hometown boy, and that's Casey Smith, who's right now in 25th. So I'm going to stay in that top 25.
Yeah, he's a huge proponent of the whole split back to Opens that way. I remember a conversation with him at a classic where he was very upset that they went to 9 tournaments and the full spread and having a job and kids and everything else. So
yeah, I mean, he's a great example, I think, of like your working man, a guy that busts his butt on and off the water, but any waking moment he can get on the water to get better, to improve, that keeps up with every living thing. going on in fishing. He's a great example of that, and he's one I'd love to see him. It was super cool to see him make the Classic and fish that, and watch him fish the Classic, and so it would be cool to see him make it on to the next round of the Opens, EQs, and have a crack at trying to make the Elite Series. But I am, as much as I loved the gauntlet and the list of anglers that the All Nine put out, I do think this might have been the best option for them, where it's like 4 tournaments versus 3 tournaments is a big difference.
And don't forget about the end of the year is going to be the most competitive ever of a thing. This fall is going to be just a brutal gauntlet as far as, your top guys plus elite guys plus Bass Nation guys. Like, it's going to be a really loaded group.
Yeah. And if you want it, you still got to fish almost a full schedule. You're still fishing 7 events, but now I think they found a good middle ground where it's like, if you can't go fish the 7, then you're probably not prepared for 9 on the Elite Series. So this is a good middle ground of, if you can make it, great. Like, you have to pony up.
And I'm all for the experience of a full season, all that stuff, if that's the goal. But realistically, I mean, this is kind of the Matt Pangrack. I did an interview with him a long time ago, or not even that long ago, probably a year ago. And he was talking about the sunk costs of fishing, or like what you could spend that money on, the travel money, the entry fee instead to get better. And at some point, you saw a ton of anglers in that gauntlet that their odds were not very good. So they did not continue down that road to finish out the season. This is essentially making that option for you. Like, if you make it, you get to fish another 3 tournaments and you're, head of steam trying to make the Elite Series. If you didn't have a good year, you don't have to go spend another $10,000, $15,000 traveling this fall. So, to me, I agree. I think it's a great compromise, and it'll be cool to see, watch it play out this year.
Yeah. Heck yeah. Anything else business from the Bass Boat wise to cover before we get into today's show?
I don't think so, man. I think we roll in with Mr. Shane.
All right. Well, before we do, 2 quick things. 30% off of, that ended yesterday. Well, if you missed out on the Jackal Drift Fries being 30% off, I'm sorry that you missed out on that. But I believe the Omnia 2 times pro rewards lasts another week. Could be wrong in that. So if you're an Omnia Pro member, you get double the money back on your rewards. And then through February 4th, you have 25% off Outcast Tackle and 30% off of Strike King homing minnows. So some sales going on over at Omnia. Make sure you're checking out especially if you're a pro member, you're checking out that pro deal page, because some pretty stupid deals that you can get in on rods, reels, baits, things of that nature. So make sure you guys check those out. So without further ado, let's get into an episode with Mr. Shane Lehew. All right, we are with our guest for today, Mr. Shane Lehew. Shane, it's good to have you back here on Serious Angler. It's been a little bit, but dude, how's the winter going? It sounds like so far the Carolinas have survived through the nice winter tundra that you got presented with.
Yeah, we survived. We don't get much snow here. Well, and when we do, the next couple days are typically 50 degrees, so it's all gone in 2 days. But it's actually been really, really cold, which it has through most of the country. We had a bunch of nights in the teens, and it's really dropped the water temps pretty quickly. But as far as the snow and everything like that, we typically get more freezing rain, sleet. The mountains, especially when it comes from that direction, it knocks it down so quick that we don't really have to deal with it.
It's been a pretty rowdy 6 months, I would say, for you guys in the Carolinas between hurricane and now this winter. Like, it's what do you guys even do when you get that much snow? Because it's not like you have the plows and stuff like we have in the north to manage it.
No, they've gotten better at like overly salting the roads, even if there's a chance, which sometimes it's kind of annoying because there'll be an inch of salt on the roads and then we don't even get anything. But they've been better at preparing. A lot of stuff will shut down. Like I had to take my tag, for instance, for my last year's boat that I sold. I had to return my trailer tag, and they shut down at like 12 o'clock that day. It didn't even start snowing until 6, 7 at night. So just things like that. Just people people around here just aren't prepared for it. I grew up in Iowa, so I'm used to, having winters and things like that. And, but no, it's never very bad. I live kind of in the country, so some of the back roads are a little rough, but usually you get on the highways and everything's fine.
That's good. Yeah. There's definitely a lot of places like watching, I think it was Keith Carson put out something from Florida with like North Florida, some of the snow they're getting. It's like places like that are not prepared in the slightest, rightfully so, because it is Florida. But
I think they said that was like 120 years or 150 years, something since that's happened.
Yeah.
So that's you're not prepared for anything when it's 100 years apart.
No.
Most people don't see 100 years.
I think some of my favorite images from that snowstorm was like the plow truck where they like MacGyvered the plow onto a truck and a guy was sitting in the bed throwing salt. And I'm like,
that's awesome.
This is like
that's
only
probably
in
not
Florida.
going to get you very far. Yeah.
No.
I hope that showed up on that Florida Man or whatever that was.
Yeah.
Right.
When in doubt, redneck it out.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well, cool, man. How's the off season been getting ready? Because speaking of Florida, you're going to be headed that direction here in a couple weeks.
Yeah, I think I leave out February 14th or 15th, something like that. But it's been good. I've actually spent a lot of time doing a lot of tackle stuff, and because it was an absolute disaster after last year. So it's been nice. I didn't have a boat for a couple months. So that really forced me to go ahead and get some, rods, reels, maintenance, kind of doing all that. Trying to organize. My garage is still a disaster. But mostly that's because I got, I'm just trying to get the stuff ready because I'm going to fish the MPFL as well. So I'm going to be gone, I think a month and a half straight as soon as we get out of the gate. So it's been nice to prepare things. Not having a boat has forced me kind of to do that.
Been hitting the Call of Duty pretty hard with Cobb this offseason?
No, I actually haven't been playing the video games like I used to. I've maybe played 3 or 4 nights in 6 months probably.
Oh, wow.
I got on a streak there where I played a couple nights in a row, but not like I used to. I've kind of gotten away from it. I'm getting old. I get tired. I took my wife to the Duke basketball game last night. We didn't get back until almost 2 a.m. So I'm still tired. Got get 6.5 hours of sleep at 36 years old. And you're pretty tired. It's not bad if I go to bed early and then get 7 hours of sleep, but it's definitely much more noticeable. Like I feel like I have a hangover, and it's just from lack of sleep.
Dude, that is the most true statement. I'm 29 and I have prioritized sleep this last year. And if I don't go to bed early, like I wake up early no matter what. So it's just going to be brutal as far as like, I need to try and get 7-8 hours of sleep. Otherwise I'm the same way, man. It's like, what's wrong with me? Oh, wait, I just didn't get as much sleep. Yeah.
I'm actually looking forward to going and fishing because it'll force me probably to be in bed at, 9 o'clock. Still be up in long days, but
get you to bed early.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I unfortunately have been learning that about the whole sleep thing. It's especially with now going full time with things, I've been getting better sleep. I've been averaging a little bit over 8, which has been
dang.
I didn't think I'd feel that good afterwards, but it is amazing now. What that's been able to do, just like even just for health, like even losing weight has been much easier. It seems like now that you're getting good sleep, it's just incredible what it does for you. But back to the MPFL thing, man. We talked about that on the last show, kind of reading like who some of the new highlights were that were fishing NPFL. And with that, so do they have like what MLF's doing with like the little lock deal for your transducer? Or do you have to actually like take that off for NPFL events?
No, they have a lock deal, which is nice. It's got like a serial number and all that from the last meeting we had. They kind of went over all that. It's it looks like pretty much a big orange like cylinder type deal, and I guess it just goes over the end of your transducer wire. So it makes it nice because taking it on and off would be absolutely impossible.
Yeah, that'd be a pain.
Yeah, because some of them, I mean, I'm driving to the event and we start practice, that next morning. So you wouldn't have time.
Yeah.
Especially with the way our boats are rigged and things like that.
Yeah.
It would be a pain.
Makes sense.
How you feel about that schedule compared to what the elites got going?
It's good. It's perfect. I mean, like I said, most of the ones that are really far away from me, outside of the St. Lawrence, which we don't have anything really going on that month for the elites. They're all pretty much back to back. So the schedule's good. I mean, what sold me, I signed up pretty late. They ended up their, to be announced tournament ended up being Lake Norman. So I was like, yeah, probably time to go do that. And it's really hard to win that time of year in April, but it's just nice fishing a big caliber tournament like that and sleeping in your own bed.
Nice and relaxed at that point.
Yeah. Try to be. Probably not, honestly, but
it'll probably be the tournament you get the least sleep. Like,
yeah,
you know how it goes.
I probably won't be able to fall asleep just thinking about the 9 million places I've caught a bass on Lake Norman, and I'm gonna try not to overthink it. That's goal number one.
Yeah.
It seems to be as cliche with talking about with Livesey at Fork and the Johnson brothers up in St. Lawrence, like things like that, where it's almost a bad thing to be fishing at home because it can go one of two ways, where it's either you're going to be in the top 5 or you're not going to catch them at all.
Yeah,
it can go one of two ways.
I fished 2 Bassmaster Opens, I think, on Norman. Those are the 2, I would say, biggest events I've fished. And 1 FLW a long time ago when they had the Invitational. And that you nailed it. Like, it's either a top 5 or a 70th. It's no in between.
Well, that should be fun either way. Looking forward to watching you on there, and obviously in the elites here starting in a couple weeks. But man, getting into the conversation of today's episode, talking about that late winter, getting into the early spring. Things are still cold, but you're starting to see some light at the tunnel. The end of winter, and that's where talking about right now, that ditch fishing. And I think to some people, especially I think in your guys' area, and you talk more of that southeastern range, people understand what a ditch is. But for folks like Andy and myself, we don't have very many ditches here in New York. So that's kind of an interesting concept to think of, and especially when trying to approach it when going to fish places down by you guys. So I guess to kind of kick things off, in your own POV, how would you describe a ditch? And then I guess this time of year, how would you approach it from whether it's start out towards the main lake and work your way in or vice versa?
Yeah, I mean, first thing is it's all about finding bait. A ditch it's a very relative term. It can just be a pocket, right?
Mhm.
Like you can have, for instance, like on Norman, we'll just take that I found them the other day. I hadn't been fishing in forever, so I didn't really know what was going on. You can always catch them shallow too on these southern lakes. But I did. There was wind blowing overnight, which is perfect. So if you look, the night before on Wind Finder or Weather Channel, figure out which direction that wind's blowing. It's cold. The water temps are cold. The shad aren't swimming like they normally do. So they're getting blown around a lot more than they typically do. They're starting to die off. So the first thing, if I go into even a new lake, and let's say it's January, which is perfect prime time, January, February, December, for that typical ditch fishing deal. That we fished around for quite a while, and we weren't catching a ton. And then I pulled up in one little ditch that I've caught them years ago. I haven't caught them since then. It's probably been 5 years since I caught them out of there, and they were loaded. And now with live scope, it cuts the time by 90% on trying to find that stuff, right? Like you can pan around, see the fish, see the bait, see how they're reacting in that stuff. So I mean, like I said, it could be a creek ditch, it could be a pocket, it could be so many different things. And I think it's very lake dependent on what you're looking for. Like we have spotted bass, so they'll be from 2 feet of water to 60. Like they're just so spread out this time of year because there is so much bait and the bait's so easy to access. for those fish because, like I said, a lot of the bait's dying off. They're not swimming very fast. You know, the bass that in this particular ditch that I found, it was kind of unobvious. It's just one little channel that swings actually closer to the bank, and it gets a little deeper on one side and it's flat on another. So that's basically what a ditch is, and it dropped off from 5 feet on the right side of this thing to the bank on the left goes from 2 feet to 20 really quick. And they just had all this bait pushed up. They could have swam around with their mouth open and eaten as much as it, and all of them were like, our spots on Norman are getting kind of like, they almost look like linear spots. They're getting so fat, so thick, and especially this time of year. You know, they're feeding really heavy. And it's kind of the similar, like Clark's Hill, that's another great lake, Murray, Hartwell. I mean, Hartwell probably put the whole ditch fishing deal on the map, I would say. Like all those old classics, those guys like Casey Ashley catching them in that ditch across from Green Pond, and they still get in that ditch to this day. Like they use the bait uses the same places, and obviously the bass are going to follow the bait. So it's not, you don't have to overthink it. I mean, obviously there's a lot of ditches where you're not going to catch anything, and it's probably bait related, especially with herring. Herring don't get as bad as, like, we have a lot of thread fins, and we call them little butterball shads. They're tiny little 2-inch deal, and they're gonna not swim around as quickly as a herring typically will. But you don't even have to find herring on those lakes. Like a lot of those fish still eat shad. They mix in together. Like, they go to the similar places. So there's so many things. Like a ditch is a very broad term to me. Like I said, it can be a pocket. It can be the side of a roadbed. You can find them on banks. I mean, mapping is the best way to find it, right? Like what we have with mapping now. Like, for instance, I use Garmin, and they're with that depth shading deal. You can find just little unobvious places. Like I know a couple places on Hartwell where it looks just like a clay bank. And you look on your GPS mapping, and there's one little deeper section that's no wider than a bass boat. That's obviously a ditch as well, and they can range from 2 to 4 foot drops to 30 and 40 foot drops. It all depends on time of year, obviously. This is definitely the best time of year to do it for sure, and it's finding that bait fish and being able to stay around the bait, because they will move around a lot. Like, let's say the wind blows the opposite direction from where I was fishing, 2 days ago. Most of those fish are going to leave.
Wow.
They're going to spread out, and they're not going to be as easy to catch. They get in that confined area, and that's when you can really smash them.
And would you describe like that as, when I started first from the West and traveling down to Rayburn and different things, like going places where ditches were ditches, and I didn't understand finding a ditch. Like, I mean, would you say, because it is a very broad term, I understand what you're saying. I mean, would you say that like there's the deepest part of, say there's a pocket? I mean, obviously you have like the prototypical ditch going down that, but then maybe there's like a little back corner that's a little deeper, or like you said, a little pocket. Is it normally the deepest spot in there, or not necessarily, where you're finding that this time of the year?
This time of year, I mean, you want to find some kind of break, some kind of contour, typically, if they're going to follow that kind of stuff in there. And a lot of the fish, they're really hard to see in that stuff, especially like our southern spotted bass. They suck so tight to the bottom. That's what people go in there, and they may see the bait and they're like, oh, there's no fish in here. I guarantee you there is. It's wintertime. Bass are, majority of the time, they're feeding on crawdads and some kind of bait fish that's in the lake. So, fishing around those areas kind of to find where the fish are, even with live scope. Like, if they get that tight to the bottom, they're very hard to see. Like, you really, really have to be paying attention to the bottom. And if you see something crawling on the bottom that looks a little bigger than a shad, or we have a lot of perch too, so it's when they get in those real tight balls and groups and things like that, they're kind of hard to decipher. Especially, we got a lot of clay. Man, they can get so tight in that clay. Like I've caught them on Norman and on Hardwell, Kiwi, and their bellies are actually red from just laying in that stuff because it's warm. And then, I mean, anytime bait comes through, they shoot up, they eat the bait, and then they suck right back down to the bottom and they just chill out. So, the bait is the big key. I would say that's the number one factor to a good ditch and a ditch that's not so good.
So with that, are you dropping the trolling motor and looking for them now with scope first, or will you like idle that and look for bait first on side imaging?
Yeah, usually side scan, try to find the bait, and then put down the troll motor and troll around. And obviously now we found that a lot of fish they float, which is why, 10, 15 years ago, we didn't know that. They're just like, I've caught them the last couple days. You'll be fishing in the ditch and then you pan behind you and it's 80 foot deep and there's one sitting in 10 foot of water. And most of them, you fire over there and they're pretty active. They bite.
Easy pickings.
Yeah. I mean, that's just kind of where we're at now. But like, with the MPFL not having a live scope now, I don't know that we'll really have any ditch tournaments, being that we're starting quite that late and with the schedule that we have. But if you don't have a live scope, like I said, 2D sonar, you can still find a lot of bait and things like that, and they still will bite a fish head spin. Quite often a jerk bait, things like that, just fishing around in there. Obviously, if you're not fishing a tour level event where you can throw the Alabama rig, they light that thing up in the ditches, so it's just a big ball of bait in the middle of a ball of bait. So, but yeah, the live scope's made it a lot easier for sure.
It'd be interesting to see like if that kind of environment shows up for an MPFL event. With how many guys are going to be taking either jig head minnow, a wacky rig, and just making some air casts into the abyss on a whim, just
a feeling.
Before live scope though, how many of us have actually thrown around like that just out in the abyss and caught one randomly?
Yeah, not very often.
Fair enough.
Not out there over 80.
It's usually the random co-angler that
I was going to say, it's a co-angler in the back.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I
and it
have
works
had my butt whooped a few times, and I'm like, where are you throwing? Like the
where
guy's
the
back there reeling in a shaky head, like something you shouldn't be doing and smashing them. So it does happen.
Yeah. And remind me, in the NPFL, are you able to use your live sonar in practice?
No.
Not even in practice.
Pre-practice, I think you can.
Okay.
I don't think there's any stipulations, but it's a 30-day off limit, so that's if you find them out there floating around, it'd just be hard for me to go out there and just fire around aimlessly in the middle.
Yeah.
Will we see anybody pointing their 2D out in front?
I don't know. I would assume there'd be a ruling on that. I'm sure that's how live scope started, but I hope not.
See transducers attached everywhere.
I doubt
it. I'd be kind of like, I don't know. I've been thinking about that a lot, honestly, when all this whole conversation started like a year and a half ago, and I was like, because I've heard of people doing that back in the day, like pointing their 2D forward, but I'm just like trying to think of how you read 2D and how you try to look at it, and that would just be too much of like mess with my mind that I wouldn't even bother with it.
Be way too many colors and things going on.
Take way too long to learn for me, so that's out on my end.
Yeah,
I think with the schedule too, it's not a like super live scope type schedule. Even with the elites, it's not a. It's not like what we had last year. It's much different.
Yeah.
It'd be fun to see.
Yeah. I think it'll be a good mix.
So, you mentioned a couple of the main baits you would throw to fish for these fish in the ditches, right? Like maybe what are like one or two off baits that somebody might not think will get bit?
I don't like a football jig for one. They bite that quite often still. Finesse jig. I think that gets overlooked now a lot with live scope, just because you're throwing to fish that you can see. Carolina rig will still get bit. It's old school, but Ned rig. A lot of the, like I said, a lot of the fish are still relating to the bottom. They're just following the bait in there. They still a bass. A lot of them, not all of them, obviously. Now, like I said, with live scope, a lot of them float out there in the middle, but a lot of them still relate to something, whether it's the bottom or the side of the ditch, or maybe some structure that's within the ditch, like trees, timber, things like that.
Yeah.
What I to quickly add in here, I failed to mention this earlier when we were talking about kind of like how you look for a ditch, because like to your point, a ditch can be a lot of things. In my eyes, it's a ditch is like how you guys in the South refer to as a perch, where it's like it can mean a lot of things, but you know it when you see it. So it's
Right.
like what I'll do is, well, for the folks that, especially if you're watching on YouTube, you've already seen the overlay, but for the MP3 folks, we'll make a post on this on social, but I will add in some overlays of mapping layers and stuff to kind of give examples of one that might be an exaggerated ditch. It's a very obvious one, and some that might be subtle as well. So in case you missed it too, if you're watching on YouTube and you're curious still, we added those in there. But yeah, to your point, Shane, it can be a lot of things, but it's kind of one of those things where once you start getting used to it, you know when you see it when you're looking on the map.
Yeah, like I said, big key is finding bait fish this time of year, especially. Like they're starting to die at Norman. You just see random thread fins and just sitting there at the top, rolling on their side. And they can get in the back. Like to your point, yes, they used to school really really good on Norman. I think, and like Hartwell and things like that. I think with the amount of pressure, that's kind of knocked that down quite a bit. And boat traffic, honestly, whether it's bass fishermen, crappie fishermen, just people riding around out in the winter on nice days, it's kind of knocked that down. But I've found them in ditches in the backs of places where, especially like now when the water's low, they'll be in 2 foot of water where that bait's blown all the way in the back of the ditch to where it flattens out. And you can catch some really really big bags in a hurry if you find that. But that's kind of, it's almost gotten to like a needle in a haystack type deal. They used to do it so good. And if you found that, we used to blast them on a grub. Like, absolutely smash them on just a single tail.
Like a 4-inch Kalen's grub, basically.
Yeah.
And Fat Albert.
Yeah. The ugliest color. I'm going to give away an old secret here, but just chartreuse with some silver glitter in it. Like, that was the deal. I don't know why. And I can't hardly catch them on that thing anymore. They won't hardly bite it.
Like, oh, minnow up 2 feet below the surface.
It's the
so bright,
dumbest looking thing, and it used to be a staple here. You just throw it on a old school just ball head on a bait caster of all things, and just wind it slow through all that dying shad, and for whatever reason it would catch them. But now with like a Alabama rig and a minnow and things like that, it's kind of gone by the wayside.
Yeah, we kind of talked about the wind playing a factor with bait fish this time of year, just because they're not moving very much. But regardless of the wind, say it's a slick day, and you found them in a ditch and you were catching them, how often do you feel like that those fish are going to move? How do you re-find them? What does that look like? Or do you feel like pretty consistent in the winter minus a wind factor?
Yeah, I would say it's pretty consistent this time of year. Just with the water temps being so cold, you get a lot of the cool mornings. Like I was just watching the Bassmaster Open at Clarks Hill, and that's what a lot of guys were doing. They were catching them early and they were catching them fast. And most of those fish, even if it is slick calm, the wind does, like I said, it plays a factor, but it's not always going to. Like, ditches that are good are usually going to be good. Like the bait, for whatever reason, is always in that area that time of year. It doesn't change a whole lot. So this time of year, you could fish the same one for quite a while. They're not just gonna, unless the bait just decides to leave, which isn't typical for this time of year. Like I said, because they're not moving quite as quickly as Other times of year, like, summertime, they're moving all the time.
Yeah.
They're never sitting still. This time of year, they're not. I mean, our water temps are anywhere from 37 to 45 degrees right now throughout most of the lake. So it's pretty cold. They're not, and the bass don't want to have to swim, 2 or 3 miles to go find another pack of them. They're gonna find bait within that area because the bait's gonna stay there.
With that, do you like if you find them and say they're in around like if there's bait in 15, 20 foot? Do you find that's pretty similar if you run different ditches? Like, will they be in the same kind of depths?
That's what I was gonna also say. Is usually you can kind of pattern where they're at. Now there's ditches and things like that have structure in them that may be a little different. Let's say a road bed. Road beds are always great. Timber, things like that. But usually if you find them, let's say at the mouth of a ditch, most of the time you can kind of run that pattern to where you're not wasting a whole bunch of time in the back. Or if you're finding them in the back, you don't have to waste a whole lot of time out in the front of it. So typically this time of year is a very good pattern time of year because a lot of the fish throughout the lake are doing similar things. They're not doing one thing on this end of the lake all the time and then a completely different thing on the other end, especially in southern lakes. And that's where you hear a lot of ditch stuff, and also like Texas, things like that. I mean, they do it a lot there. It's more, I think, creek channel related, but I mean a creek channel essentially is also a ditch. So
Everything's
like I said, it's such a broad term. Like it's so hard to be like. I mean, that's when you go to a term and they're like, yeah, I'm catching them in ditches. Well, that really narrows it down. Like that could be you're catching them in 10 foot of water or you're catching them in 60. I don't. So you just, like I said, just finding the bait fish is definitely the key.
Now, is there any correlation between water temp where you'll find them like in the general term ditch, right? Like at the head of it or all the way in the back? Like, is there like a gauge on water temperature that you can follow to know where they might be?
No, I think it's more time of year, honestly. Like, I think from late December to right before they spawn, they're kind of they're just going to be in some of them. Like I said, they're not going to be in all of them. I mean, you can go out a whole day, and early in the morning is obviously the best time. A lot of that bait's been funneling in there overnight and stuff like that, and they stay there overnight, and then the fish are going to feed in the morning. They're not feeding as heavy this time of year in the winter as the bass aren't, as far as like spring and summer months, because a lot of our fish around here, I would say in the entire southeast, they feed a lot at night, but not so much this time of year. They're more visually feeding because it's so cold. Like you're not going out there throwing a chatterbait at night in 38-degree water. I've tried it. It doesn't work that good. And we got one of the best night fishing lakes in the country, and it does not. I mean, you'll get like I'll go on like a warm night, when it's because we'll get some random days here where it's like tomorrow's going to be 65 degrees.
Dang.
Tonight's going to be 50. And 2 weeks ago it was 14 and highs in the 20s. We got random weather, but it doesn't really change like the whole ditch fishing deal. Even when it gets real hot, like I said, the fish are there for one thing, and that's to feed and feed heavy before they go spawn.
Yeah. Do you find like when they're loaded in a ditch, like is it usually catch a few then move on to the next, or can you kind of stay there and pick them apart for a while?
Yeah, I mean you'll get a gauge, like I said, especially with the live scope now, like how they're reacting to the bait. Like if you catch a couple, I mean, because they do get accustomed to their buddies just going from 20 feet deep, 30 feet deep up to the surface, and they're like, all right, I figured out what's going on here. And I mean, especially in clear water lakes like here, it's pretty much, you catch a few, then you got to leave. Hopefully you got a little milk run. Typically this time of year, that's what I try to find if I am fishing, ditches and things like that. You try to find a little milk run to where you in the morning, you can keep those fish active. Now, if you find a really good one that's absolutely loaded, then yeah, you can pound on them typically.
That's awesome.
But if there's just a few fish, like 10 or 15, you're not going to catch all 15 of them typically. Like they're going to know, especially like I said, if the water's cleaner.
Yeah, you'll probably catch 2 or 3 of them, and then they get real weary.
Yep.
That was one thing that was maddening about fishing Laniers. You'd see on Ford, you'd see a school of 30 spots, and you catch one. The whole school follows them, and you can't catch another one in that group. It was the most maddening thing.
Yeah, especially when they follow them, you're pretty much toast. Especially like I said, in these super clear water. I mean, unless they're relating to some kind of structure where you catch one or two, and then finally they go back to that structure, and you wait a little bit, and then you keep catching them.
Mm-hmm. So I know we have some folks that are avid night anglers that listen to this, and you brought up fishing at night around there. So is that what you look for if you go out this time of year? It's like the warmer nights, or is there anything that might be more beneficial?
Yeah, and with it, I mean, it gets dark so quick. Like here, it's usually good like right when it gets dark, and then you got like an hour, and then it's over. Like in the summer, it's good all the way till 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, however long you want to stay out. But it's just not as good, especially with I think it's a lot of water temp deal too.
Mm-hmm.
Once it starts getting, I'm not gonna go when it's in the 40s. once it gets below about 52, 55, I'm not going at night anymore.
Yeah.
Spring and summer are definitely, they feed a lot heavier at night.
Adam, is there anything you ever dabbled with the night fishing stuff?
Yeah, man. Certainly, like in Colorado, our lakes were so small before moving to Idaho. First of all, Idaho's got some great night fishing, but in Colorado, lakes are so small that in the summertime, right, like it's just miserable to fish with wake boats and like other places in the country. Just the difference is you're talking even smaller bodies of water, and so the fishing was great at night. So we actually had some of the bigger tournaments were night tournaments.
That's cool.
So I dabbled with it, but then we get back to the point of talking sleep stuff, and now I just can't get myself to even think about it, man. Like I'm honest, like I want to be in bed. I don't want to be up all night and then have 2 days to recover. So I guess I've become a little bit of a baby there, but I used to enjoy the heck out of it. It's a fun way to fish. Catch some really big fish at night.
I'm with you on that. It was like I did a little bit in New York, and it was like clockwork. It was like 11:30 p.m. It would almost sound like it was raining because all the bait was starting to go nuts and getting chased. So I figured it out in the summers when I was away from college, where I'd get my workouts in the gym when it's real, like when no one's there late at night, and then from there have the kayak in the truck, go to the lake, and then fish until like 4 a.m. Sleep till 11 a.m. and just run it back again. It was the good old days anyway. But.
You're a madman. Try doing that now and see how you feel.
Yeah. Dude, we got guys around here that are 50, 60, 70 years old, and they're ate up with it. They'll be out there till 2 a.m. Then they'll be at the tackle store the next morning at 8 a.m.
That's crazy.
I don't know how they do it.
It's a way of life, man.
I'm useless the next day if I fish till 2 a.m.
Me too. I'm useless. Yeah. If I stay up late in general, I don't even have to be drinking, whatever it may be. Like the next day, I'm just like, all right, so the day's gone.
It's funny. Sit around and watch YouTube.
If I stay up late, I still have to get up at the same time. Like that I normally would. Otherwise, my day's shot. Like I find if I go to bed at like 1, I better get up at 5:30 and take the lack of sleep so I can stay in a normal routine. But if I do that and I drink like 4 cups of coffee, I'm usually pretty good.
Caffeine helps everything.
Yeah.
Not sure if that's the recommended route for people of going that many cups of caffeine.
Yeah. It's fine. It's fine.
Yeah. It's good for you.
Yeah.
It's better than.
All right.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Andy.
I was going to say it's better for you than energy drinks, so I'll take my cup of coffee.
So they said.
Agreed.
All right. So, Adam, Andy, you guys got anything else for Shane before we hit him with the last question here?
No, I think it's a good breakdown. I still think the show title should be named Ditches.
What is a drain? Yeah, what is a ditch?
Could be anything.
Yeah.
But in all
It
seriousness,
should be
you did
a
a great job
question.
breaking it down.
What is a ditch?
I tried. I mean, like I
Yeah,
said, it's so broad. It's just,
it is.
I mean, it you got to take the time to learn it, and like this time of year, you got to get out there and get out there early. Unfortunately, when you don't want to be out there and you can't feel your hands, like that's when they bite. That's the best time to go do it. Like I said, go back and watch the first hour of live at Clarks Hill from whatever it was a week ago. Like you see everybody doing it.
Yeah.
Well, like you mentioned earlier, I was actually watching it the other day. It's funny you bring it up, but the Hardwell Classic back with Casey Ashley and Ike, and like you saw that, it's when all those guys were catching them first thing. That's
You get 1 hour in the morning, and then you have to wait till the very end of the day to have them bite again.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just a grind.
I mean, and that's a great example. Like Ike, I think I remember he was catching them on a jerk bait way in the back of one, and then Casey Ashley's at the front of one. That's a really long. I mean, it's an obvious one at Hardwell. Most people that are from the South that watch this are going to be like, yeah, I know exactly where it was. It's just they go and they use the same ones, and if you can start finding the ones that they are using, I mean, then you're dialed in. Like, and you're going to run 20 other ones that don't have a bass in them, but that's just kind of the way it goes with that type of fishing.
Yeah, so we'll just make this thumbnail. We'll have it like a 4-box where we'll put a picture of a dock, a bridge, and then some random creek will say ditches. They're all ditches.
Yep.
What is a ditch?
It's all a ditch.
Every single
Awesome. So to cap things off with you here, Shane, we have what's new to the show here, and it's called our electric take of the show, and it's powered by our friends over at Amped Outdoors. That's our team's preferred battery to power our fishing and our adventures, whether it's boat, kayak, whatever that may be. And with that, we would love to get a take from you on one, what do you think weight wise it is going to take to win the Bassmaster Classic on Ray Roberts, and then two, besides yourself, because we'll try and vote for you too. We love to see you win the Classic, but if not yourself, who would be your pick to win the Classic?
I'm gonna go Lee Livesey. I think he's top 15 like every one he's fished or something like that, if I remember correctly. That one's close to him, obviously, and I've seen him put some Instagram stories and things like that up of him being out there. I don't know how well he knows the lake. I talked to him some, but not to that extent. I think he'd be a very good pick. I think he will be highly picked in fantasy fishing.
Yeah.
If I was picking, I would pick him. He's probably going to be in the high bracket, I'm assuming, though. But weight-wise, man, it's so weird, like the time of year. It can be so many different things in Texas, right? It can still be winter. It can still be freezing cold. Or we can get there and the lake shoots up 4 feet like last time we were there. And they're all in the bushes and the water temps are 60 degrees. You're thinking you're going to find some on the bed. So it's so time of year dependent. But I would say 3-day event. I'm going to go I'll give you an exact number.
All right.
I'm going to go 66.2.
That's what?
Lock it in.
22-ish.
Lock it in.
That'd be sick.
There's big. It's going to take over 20 pounds a day, I would think. I don't remember what Hank had last time we went. I don't think it was quite that much.
I think it was like in the mid 50s, if I recall.
50s? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, obviously, that was in mid to early June, and it was scorching.
Yeah, it was hot. So it may be more than 66. I don't know. I've only been that one time. I absolutely sucked. The first day of the tournament, the last day of practice, I got on one little stretch, and I pulled like a 7-pounder to the top. Then like 3 bushes later, I pulled a 6 to the top. And I was like, oh, I'm gonna smack. I got like 3 or 4 more bites down the stretch. I was like, this is gonna be good. And then for whatever reason, I have no idea what happened, but I never got a keeper bite the entire day. I zeroed in a Bassmaster Classic the first day. It was so bad. I was like, how did I go from possibly catching 30 pounds 2 days ago to catching, I call like 7 13-inchers. That was frustrating.
Well, I remember that being tough for a lot of people, not just yourself.
Yeah, it was weird. And we had a bunch of storms too. And I mean, obviously that really hurt a lot of things. And there was a very small section of the lake that was really going off. And if you weren't in that section, you were behind the 8 ball. Like you had no chance of winning.
It's
a small lake to begin with.
It wasn't day one that was almost canceled. Like you had a half a day basically.
Yeah. I remember I took like a 2-hour nap in the truck and just lightning, and I mean the truck was shaking from all the wind. I was like, "There's no way we go." And then they blasted us off. I think it was like 10 o'clock before we went, 10:30. Because I think 4 hours. If you get to a 4-hour delay, they'll cancel. It's so hard to cancel a classic though, and I mean they did the right thing. Like there's so much invested into that tournament with TV and I mean people that have traveled there. It's hard to cancel and make people stay an extra day. So I they made the right decision.
Yeah. Will we see one over 10? You think?
I wouldn't doubt it. 100%. I wouldn't doubt that at all. Yeah, I'm starting to doubt my 66 pounds now. Starting to think like
thinking going up.
Yeah, that's yeah. That one was in June, and I mean, but there's still some big ones caught. Like there's still some 7-8 pounders. So I would say yes. Well, probably if we hit it perfect like pre-spawn, yeah, I would say you'll see at least 1 or 2 over 10 pounds.
I don't think you guys will need oxygen tanks in the live wells this time, though. Which would be nice.
No, won't be 100 degrees out. Which, like I said, that first day was nice because heck, it rained and it was like 60 degrees. So
yeah,
it was a weird tournament for sure, and it's a different lake. It's very like featureless, I would say, off the bank for the most part. But then there's creeks with a lot of timber, and then I don't know. I doubt the lake will be up like it was, especially in June. I don't know if that lake's controlled in some way. I definitely need to do some more research on it, which I probably will. But I'm more of a get to the lake and figure it out when I get there type of guy.
Yeah, you seem pretty lax. That's showing that it's worked.
I feel like I'd do better if I don't overly get things in my head before I go to an event. Like you get too much stuff in your head, like I need to be doing this, this, and this, and then you lose track of remembering how to find fish almost.
Yeah. It's good. Wise words.
Yeah. Well, fellas, you got anything else for Shane before we let him go?
I'm just going to say good luck this year and go catch him up. Sounds like you're going to be busy, so safe travels.
It'll be a very busy year.
Is this the most pro derbs you've had on schedule for a season?
Yeah, I think it's 16 events.
Gonna be moving.
Count the classic 16 events, I believe.
Although I think the locals will be happy they'll see you a little less.
Yeah, I haven't been fishing much this year. It's just been so busy. I think I've only been to Norman like 5 or 6 times in probably 4 months.
They're all probably like, "Where's Shane?"
Yeah. I got a little solo tournament Friday. I might jump in that one.
There you go.
I've got the itch. I think it was perfect. Like I was like, all right, this is nice taking a break from fishing because that's all I do. And now that I got my boat and everything, and then I've got my tackle pretty organized, and I had the itch to go again. I was like a little kid, so that's good.
Yeah, heck yeah, dude.
It's the best way to do it. A little refresh.
Yeah. Sometimes you need that.
Yeah, I'm sure the mounds of snow help too. You're like, I'm over this. I'm ready.
Hell yeah. The problem is I love this is my favorite time of year to fish though. I love it when it's cold. I like when it's blowing 15 and 40 degrees. Can't feel anything.
You belong up here.
That's usually when they're biting the best here. Our spotted bass go nuts when that goes down.
Heck yeah.
You got the chance of 20-pound bags now here.
Well, yeah, less bolts at the ramp. It's nice.
Yeah.
Heck yeah, dude.
There's quite a few tournaments still though. Norman pumps out the contests.
Well, you do live in a hotbed, to be fair. So yeah, there's
Yeah.
a lot of diligent anglers, I would say, that are year round like
No, yeah.
yourself that'll fish regardless of anything. That's
Yeah.
you're gonna have that, I'm
It's
sure.
good. It's good fishing tournaments around here too, because there's a lot of guys that fish around here locally that could fish professionally.
Yeah, I've heard that from a lot of folks, especially in that area. Like talking with Jeff Queen on the regular, that's one thing he reiterates a lot. And with him
It
and
makes you better.
Jay and all the people that he said the same thing to me. There's a lot of guys out there that would do very well on the elites or BPT or whichever trail. They'd hold their own anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
That's awesome. Well, buddy, I appreciate you taking time out of your day hopping on here. It's good to hear the boat's back, and looking forward to seeing you start wreaking some havoc here in a couple weeks on the Elite Series, man.
Go catch him up.
I'm looking forward to it. Yep. Thank you guys for having
me. Good luck, man.
Yes,
sir. All right. Thank you.
Perfect. Sweet. All right, folks, that'll do for today's show, Mr. Shane Lehew. While we've hopefully helped define the term ditch, hopefully we didn't make it more confusing for anybody that was looking to go fish ditches. It definitely makes more sense, though, when you can call it out on mapping. So hopefully if you're tuning in on YouTube, you saw those overlays we put out there. If not, if you're listening on social or listening on MP3, check our social media because we'll have a post on what is a ditch, and we'll show some mapping layers in there from Omnia and Lake Master and things of that to help you give you an idea of what we were talking about in today's show. But either way, he did share a lot of really juicy stuff on when you are fishing ditches and how to break that stuff down. But Deacon, I know we mentioned like in the north, we don't get much of that obviously because we have pretty featureless lakes for the most part. Out by you though, is that stuff that comes into play for you come springtime?
Man, it's interesting. I think because the West is so spread out in fisheries, yes. Yes and no. I vividly remember having a really good couple of days in a Toyota Series on Havasu where they were 100% in ditches. Like that's how I found them. The big largemouth anyway. And so I think that in some bodies of water, your highland reservoirs, to me, they act the same way. But then I'm learning here in Idaho, man, like in southern Idaho especially, like a lot of these are just rivers. They're just giant river systems, and I don't do as well in those. Like I'm come from fishing clear water reservoirs, right? And so I'm learning all about how these fish set up and migrate and do different things. And so I would say not as much as the rest of the part of the country. I mean, when I think ditch fishing, for me, that's Rayburn, that's Lake of the Ozarks, kind of the middle of the country that I'm used to fishing, and then of course the southeast. So there's still some of it, but I wouldn't say it's a complete, write off on what things are like out up here.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, especially speaking though to people in the South, Southeast, Carolinas, this is speaking pretty loud to you. And I'm not saying that for every lake in the north or out by your way doesn't have ditches in them, but it definitely, obviously, majority would be down in that southeast, central areas when we're talking about ditch fishing. But there's some more you can take advantage of that too. But hopefully everybody enjoyed today's episode with Shane. Make sure you guys follow him on social media. We'll have those links down below, and we have some cool episodes coming up. And that is Monday. We will have a new real biology segment here at Serious Angler coming out. And we have the folks that lead the Share Lunker program are joining Steve and I on the show. And really, really cool episode that has some pretty cool nuggets of information from it, but also to learn on how Texas Parks and Wildlife has created just the monster it has for producing giant bass. They said number 671, Share Lunker 671 was caught 2 days ago. 671 bass over 13 pounds. And it's crazy how they show the numbers still going up, but right now they're only testing from January to March, I think they said. So they don't test for share lunkers the rest of the year. That's only in that small period of time
that's insane.
They're tracking that data, which it's cool that all the different things they're doing. So make sure you guys check out that episode. That's going to drop on Monday. The last thing I have from that, did you guys know of the story of Ethel, the Bass Ethel that kind of kicked off Bass Pro Shops?
I've heard vaguely. I've heard the name, and I've heard this talked about before, but I couldn't tell you the story.
It's a really cool story. You guys will have to listen to it on Monday's show, but a cool nugget from that is apparently they held a funeral for when Ethel passed away, and thousands of people showed up. She was a 17-pounder. People came from all over. They said millions of people came to go and see her at this one Bass Pro Shops and held a funeral where thousands of people showed up.
Was
for it.
Ethel at the Springfield one in Missouri? Like
I
the
don't know
big
if
one?
I'll have to listen back to see if they mentioned which one specifically was that, because this was back in early 80s. So I don't know
Gotcha.
which Bass Pro it was. This was before Bass Pro was gigantic. And so it's a cool hearing the story of how Ethel was a big part of Bass Pro Shops in the early inception. And so it's a really cool story from that's in that episode that has so much information on it, talking about what time of year and even baits and even techniques and things like that most share lunkers are caught on. So make sure there's some fishing talk in there. So really cool one. And then Wednesday, we're hitting you guys with another heater. We have a little jig head minnow panel coming out to you guys. I know a lot of people, especially that are using forward facing, that are wanting to get better with it. People that are just getting into it now that are like the jig head minnow thing. There's so many different jig heads. There's so many different baits. There's so many different things I can do. We help break it down for you guys. And we got some freaking big time people coming on that are really good with the jig head minnow. We're still actually in the midst of completing that and finishing that up for you. But right now, the two guests that we're going to have potentially three guests on here. We have Mr. Rob G, and we got Jacob Wheeler lined up on there as well, and then another fun guest that'll be joining that. So you can get three different perspectives on throwing that bad boy. So you get to look for that episode coming next Wednesday. And then we got another fun couple weeks here leading into February and into March. And fishing's back, boys. It's like we said earlier, derb season has begun. It's here. Like we can almost feel spring. It's almost right there.
Yep, it's like itch, man. Just this itch. It's here. It's bad. But you know, one quick comment on the Jighead Minnow show. I'm so excited for this show to come out, and just thinking through, it is going to be, in my opinion, one of the most listened to shows by other pros and people who are doing this right now. Because just as our man Rob G said, he's like, I will go back and listen and hear what other guys have to say, because I think we're all kind of doing this on our own right now, and we're all like, sharing notes with each other, but like, you know what I mean? Like, this is a very real topic. Everyone's doing it. So a lot of industry folks, I think, are going to be listening in. So anyways.
Yeah, it was cool. And the last note on that too, because we don't want to give too much away, but that was a great preview of that, Deacon. But one thing to your point too, what Rob was saying was, we asked each of them is what's next. What, not just talking about the JK Minnow, what do they think is the next big thing? So if you want to get a little clue on what the next big thing is from each of these guys, make sure you tune into that too. Don't miss that nugget in there. But it's gonna be fun. A couple episodes coming up here, and I think with that, do you guys got anything else for the folks before we tune out today?
I don't think so, man.
Cool.
Wrap her up.
All right. Well, folks, appreciate y'all. Make sure you guys, if you're listening to MP3, please leave us a rating and review. If you're on YouTube, please like, subscribe. Appreciate y'all, and we'll see you on the next one.